I was sitting in the pharmacy waiting for my prescription when my phone buzzed. It was my only son, Marcus. His voice sounded different, cold and businesslike as he said, "Mom, Sarah and I are moving to California next week. We already sold your townhouse and transferred the money to our account. We need it for the down payment on our new place. Thanks for understanding." The line went dead. 42 years of raising him, sacrificing everything for his future, and he discarded me like yesterday's newspaper. But I took a deep breath and smiled. Because there was something my dear son didn't know about his poor mother. My name is Eleanor Santiago. I'm 67 years old, and until that moment, I thought I knew my son. I had become a widow 8 months ago when my husband, David, passed away suddenly from a stroke while tending his beloved garden. That morning, he had brought me fresh roses and kissed my cheek, saying, "Another beautiful day with my beautiful wife." Those were his last words to me since David's death. Marcus had been visiting more frequently, or so I believed. He came by twice a week, helped me organize David's belongings, and even suggested I get a complete medical checkup. "Mom, you need to take better care of yourself now that you're alone," he'd say with that smile I mistook for genuine concern. Now I understood it was calculated convenience. The townhouse had been our pride and joy for over 20 years. David and I had saved every penny to buy it in the historic district, slowly renovating each room with our own hands. It held decades of memories: Marcus's graduation parties, holiday gatherings, quiet evenings when David and I would sit on the front steps watching the neighborhood come alive. I never imagined Marcus would see it as nothing more than a real estate transaction. When Marcus hung up on me, I remained seated on that uncomfortable plastic chair, surrounded by other elderly people picking up their medications. For the first time in months, I didn't feel the crushing grief that had consumed me since David's death. Instead, something strange happened. Calm clarity I hadn't experienced in years. Because in that moment, I remembered something I had completely forgotten. 2 weeks before he died, David had given me a small brass key attached to a velvet pouch. "Eleanor, put this somewhere safe," he had said, his eyes twinkling with that mischievous look I had fallen in love with 45 years ago. "If something ever happens to me, this will help you remember that I never stopped taking care of you." I had tucked it away in my jewelry box without much thought, too focused on his health concerns to ask questions. The pharmacist called my name, interrupting my thoughts. I collected my blood pressure medication and walked slowly to the bus stop. I no longer had a car, according to Marcus, but as I waited for the bus, I couldn't suppress a small smile. There was something beautifully ironic about this situation. My son believed he had left me with nothing but a monthly pension and whatever meager savings were in my checking account. What he didn't know was that David, my brilliant husband, had always been a man who planned for every contingency. The bus ride home gave me time to think. I watched the city roll by: the coffee shops where David and I used to have Sunday breakfast, the park where we'd taken Marcus as a child, the library where David had spent countless hours researching investment strategies. He had been a high school math teacher for 37 years, but his true passion had been understanding financial markets and property development. When I reached home, I went straight to my bedroom and opened the jewelry box. There it was, the brass key and velvet pouch, exactly where I had left them. My hands trembled slightly as I picked them up. Inside the pouch was a small piece of paper with an address written in David's careful handwriting, along with the words, "For my Eleanor, the strongest woman I know." The address was for a bank downtown, one I had never visited. I recognized it as the building where David had occasionally gone for business meetings. Though I had never asked specifics, David had always handled our finances, and I had trusted him completely. Now I was beginning to understand that my trust had been even more well-placed than I could have imagined. That evening, I called the bank and made an appointment for the following morning. I told them I had a safety deposit box key, but wasn't sure of the details. The woman on the phone was helpful and patient, asking for my social security number and full name to verify my access rights. "Mrs. Santiago," she said after a brief hold, "I show that you are indeed authorized to access box 1247. You can come in any time during business hours with valid identification." I barely slept that night. I kept thinking about David's words. "I never stopped taking care of you." What had he meant? What had he hidden away that was so important it required a safety deposit box I knew nothing about? The next morning, I dressed in my best navy suit, the one David had always said made me look distinguished and powerful. I took extra care with my appearance, somehow sensing that this day would change everything. The bank was an impressive stone building with marble floors and high ceilings. I felt small walking through its grand lobby, but the staff treated me with respectful attention. A bank representative led me to the safety deposit box area and used both my key and the bank's key to open box 1247. Take all the time you need, Mrs. Santiago, she said, leaving me alone in the small viewing room. What I found inside took my breath away. The box contained legal documents, property deeds, stock certificates, and a thick manila envelope with "My dearest Eleanor" written on the front in David's familiar script. My hands shook as I opened his letter. My beloved wife, if you are reading this, it means I am no longer beside you to protect and provide for you as I promised on our wedding day. Please forgive me for keeping secrets, but I wanted to surprise you with security, not burden you with financial worries during our precious years together. Over the past 20 years, I have quietly invested our savings and my teacher's pension contributions in real estate and dividend-paying stocks. We don't just own our townhouse, my darling, we own the entire block of 6 townhouses, including the one Marcus is currently renting from what he thinks is a property management company. We also own the duplex where his office is located, 3 rental properties across town, and a small commercial building that houses that cafe where we used to have our Sunday dates. The stock portfolio has grown substantially over the years. According to the latest statements, you are worth approximately $2.3 million. You were never just a teacher's wife living on a modest pension, Eleanor. You are a wealthy woman who happens to have been married to a teacher who was very good with numbers. I had to stop reading and catch my breath. David had been secretly building an empire while grading algebra tests and helping struggling students after school. The man who clipped coupons and insisted we buy generic groceries had been quietly accumulating wealth that would make us financially independent for the rest of our lives. The letter continued. I put everything in your name 5 years ago, though I never told you. I wanted you to have complete control and ownership. I also never told Marcus about our real financial situation because I wanted to see what kind of man he would become, whether he would value family and character or just see us as a source of money and convenience. Eleanor, I'm sorry to say that our son has shown his true nature over these past few years. He has always seen your kindness as weakness and my frugality as poverty. He doesn't call unless he needs something, and when he visits, he spends more time calculating what he might inherit than actually talking to us. I hope I'm wrong, but I fear that when I'm gone, he will try to take advantage of your grief and your trusting nature. If he does what I think he will do, you have everything you need in this box to protect yourself. You are stronger than you know, my love, and you deserve so much better than being treated as an inconvenience by the son we raised with such love and sacrifice. Tears streamed down my face as I read the final paragraph. Use this wealth wisely, my darling. Use it to build the life you want, to help the people you choose to help, and to teach anyone who underestimates you that Eleanor Santiago is not a woman to be trifled with. I love you beyond words, beyond time, beyond death itself. Your devoted husband, David. I spent the next 2 hours examining every document in that box. David had been meticulous in his record keeping. Every investment was carefully documented, every property deed was current, and every stock certificate was legitimate. According to the latest quarterly statements, our portfolio had grown even more than David had estimated in his letter. I was worth closer to $2.8 million. The most shocking discovery was a rental agreement showing that Marcus had been paying rent for his office space to Santiago Property Management, LLC, a company that was actually just David and me. For 3 years, my son had been unknowingly paying his own parents' rent while complaining about how expensive his business expenses were and how difficult it was to make ends meet. I also found copies of loan documents showing that Marcus had applied for a significant business loan, using his residence our townhouse as collateral. The loan had been approved just 2 weeks ago, which explained his sudden urgency to sell the property and move to California. He had essentially stolen my house to secure financing for his new venture, probably telling the bank that he was the rightful owner. By the time I left the bank, my grief had been replaced by something I hadn't felt since David's death. Righteous anger mixed with crystal clear purpose. Marcus had gambled that his widowed mother was too naive and too overwhelmed by grief to understand what he was doing to her. He was about to learn how wrong he was. I decided not to confront him immediately. Instead, I spent the next week quietly consulting with attorneys, accountants, and property managers. I learned that Marcus's sale of my townhouse was completely fraudulent since he had no legal right to sell property he didn't own. The transaction could be reversed, and criminal charges could be Filed. I also discovered that Marcus had been telling people around town that I was struggling with dementia and needed help managing my affairs. This explained why some neighbors had been treating me with extra sympathy and why the bank where I had my checking account had suggested I might want to add Marcus as a joint account holder for convenience. My son hadn't just stolen from me, he had been destroying my reputation to justify his theft. On Friday morning, exactly 1 week after his devastating phone call, I called Marcus. He answered on the first ring, probably expecting me to thank him for taking care of the house sale. "Hello, sweetheart," I said in my sweetest grandmotherly voice. "How are the packing and moving plans going?" "Oh, hi Mom. Everything's great. Sarah and I are so excited about the new opportunity in California. The house sale money really helped us secure the perfect place." "That's wonderful, dear. I'm so happy you're following your dreams. Thanks for being so understanding." "Mom, I know it was hard to let go of the house, but you'll be much more comfortable in a small apartment. Actually, I found a nice senior living community about 20 minutes from here. They have a waiting list, but I could probably get you in by next month." A senior living community. He had already planned where to warehouse his inconvenient mother. "That's very thoughtful of you, Marcus. But I've been thinking, and I've decided I don't want to move to a retirement home just yet." "Mom, you can't live alone anymore. You're not getting any younger. And managing a household is getting too difficult for you." "Actually, I've been managing quite well. In fact, I've been learning some very interesting things about household management lately." "What do you mean?" "Well, for instance, I learned that I'm actually the legal owner of several households, not just the one you sold." There was a pause. "What are you talking about, Mom?" "I'm talking about the fact that your father left me much more than you realized. I'm talking about property deeds and investment accounts and legal documents that show I'm not the poor, helpless widow you think I am." The silence stretched longer this time. "Marcus, are you still there?" "Mom, I don't understand what you're saying. Dad was a teacher. He didn't have secret investments." "Oh, but he did. He had many secrets, including the fact that he never trusted you enough to tell you about our real financial situation." "That's impossible, is it? Tell me, Marcus, how did you think you had the right to sell my house? Did you actually have legal ownership, or did you just assume I was too old and too stupid to know the difference?" Another long pause. "Mom, you signed papers giving me power of attorney to handle your affairs." "I signed papers to help with your father's funeral arrangements. I never signed anything giving you the right to steal my property." "I didn't steal anything. I sold the house to help both of us." "You sold a house you didn't own to fund your move to California. That's called fraud, Marcus. It's a felony." "You're being dramatic, Mom. Look, we can talk about this when I get back from California. Maybe you're more confused than I thought." The condescension in his voice was the final straw. "Marcus, I want you to listen to me very carefully. I am not confused. I am not senile, and I am not the helpless victim you think I am. Your father made me a very wealthy woman, and he also made sure I would have everything I needed to deal with people who tried to take advantage of me even if that person was our own son." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that you've made the biggest mistake of your life. The house you sold doesn't belong to you. The money you took isn't yours. And the mother you thought you could manipulate and discard just became your worst nightmare." I hung up the phone and immediately called my attorney, Mr. Rodriguez, who had been working behind the scenes all week to prepare for this moment. "Mrs. Santiago, are you ready to proceed with the legal action?" "More ready than I've ever been for anything in my life." Within 2 hours, Marcus received official notification that criminal charges were being filed against him for real estate fraud, identity theft, and elder abuse. He also received a cease and desist order regarding the sale of my townhouse and a demand for immediate return of all funds. The legal documents made it clear that he had until Monday morning to begin making restitution or face prosecution. My phone started ringing 20 minutes later. "Mom, what the hell is going on? I just got served with some kind of lawsuit." "You got exactly what you deserved, Marcus. This is insane. You're my mother. We can work this out between us." "No, we can't. You made this a legal matter when you decided to commit fraud. Now it will be resolved through legal channels." "But Mom, I'm your son. I'm the only family you have left." "Marcus, you stopped being my son the moment you decided I was expendable." Family doesn't steal from family. Family doesn't lie to family. Family doesn't try to convince other people that their elderly mother has dementia, so they can justify robbing her. I never said you had dementia. Really, because I have 3 different witnesses who heard you tell People I was losing my faculties and couldn't manage my own affairs. I also have bank records showing you tried to add yourself to my accounts without my permission. For the first time in our conversation, Marcus was speechless. You have until Monday morning to return my money and cancel whatever transactions you made with it. After that, this becomes a matter for the district attorney's office. Mom, please. Sarah and I already put the money down on the California house. We signed contracts. We can't just cancel everything. You should have thought of that before you decided to fund your new life by stealing from your mother. I wasn't stealing. I thought Dad left you the house and maybe a small savings account. I was trying to help you manage your money, by taking it all for yourself, by making sure it was used wisely. Marcus, stop lying. We both know you never intended to use that money for my benefit. You saw an opportunity to take advantage of a grieving widow, and you took it. The fact that the grieving widow was your own mother just makes it more despicable. I could hear Sarah's voice in the background, asking what was happening. Look, Mom, let me talk to Sarah and see what we can do about returning some of the money. Maybe we can work out a payment plan or something. There is no payment plan, Marcus. You will return all of my money immediately, or you will be arrested. Those are your only two options. But what about our move to California? What about Sarah's new job? What about our future? What about the future you stole from me when you decided to sell my home and abandon me? I wasn't abandoning you. I was going to visit. When were you planning to visit the mother you put in a senior living facility against her will after taking all her assets? It's not like that. It's exactly like that, Marcus. You made a choice. You chose to see me as a burden and an opportunity instead of as your mother. Now you get to live with the consequences of that choice. Please, Mom, we can fix this. We can find a solution that works for everyone. The solution is very simple. Return my money, cancel your fraudulent transactions, and pray that I decide not to press charges anyway. And if we do that, if we give back the money, then you can continue with your move to California, and I can continue with my life, and we can both pretend that I never discovered what kind of man I raised. What do you mean? I mean that if you return my money and leave me alone, I might be willing to let you disappear to California without going to prison. But Marcus, understand this clearly. You will never get another penny from me. You will never be welcome in my home again. And when I die, you will inherit nothing, because I will have donated every cent to charity rather than leave it to someone who tried to rob me. The silence on the other end of the line was profound. Marcus, do you understand what I'm telling you? I understand, he said finally, and his voice sounded hollow, defeated. We'll figure out how to return the money. You have until Monday. I hung up and sat in David's favorite chair, feeling emotionally drained but somehow lighter than I had felt in months. For the first time since David's death, I felt like myself again, not a victim, not a burden, not a confused elderly woman, but Eleanor Santiago, the strong woman my husband had fallen in love with. Over the weekend, I received several desperate voicemails from Marcus and Sarah, alternating between apologies and attempts at emotional manipulation. They promised to return the money, begged for forgiveness, and tried to convince me that they had only been thinking of my best interests. On Sunday evening, Marcus called one final time. Mom, we transferred the money back into your account. All of it. We canceled the California house, and Sarah withdrew her job acceptance. Are you satisfied? I'm satisfied that you returned what you stole. I'm not satisfied that you only did it because you were facing criminal charges. What do you want from me? Mom, we gave you back your money. We canceled our plans. Our whole future is ruined. What more do you want? I want you to understand what you did to me, Marcus. I want you to understand that for 8 months, I have been grieving not just the loss of my husband, but the loss of my independence, my home, my security, and my dignity. I want you to understand that you took advantage of my grief to rob me, and then you tried to convince everyone that I was losing my mind to justify what you did. I never meant for it to go that far. But it did go that far, and now I know exactly who you are and what you're capable of. So what happens now? Now you move on with your life, and I move on with mine. Separately. Mom, I'm still your son. Biologically, yes. But Marcus, being someone's son is about more than genetics. It's about love and respect, and loyalty and trust. You destroyed all of those things when you decided to steal from me. Can't we try to rebuild those things? Can you give me back the 8 months I spent thinking I was poor and helpless? Can you undo the damage you did to my reputation in this community? Can you take back the lies you told about my mental capacity? Can you restore the trust you shattered? I don't know how. Neither do I, Marcus. And at my age, I don't have the time or energy to try. That was the last conversation I had with my son. He and Sarah moved to a different state, not California, since they could no longer afford their original plan. I heard through mutual acquaintances that they were struggling financially, and that their marriage was under severe strain. I wish I could say I felt sorry for them, but I didn't. They had gambled everything on their ability to steal from a helpless old woman, and they had lost. As for me, I used my newfound wealth to create the life David had always wanted for me. I renovated my townhouse, turning it into the beautiful home we had always dreamed it could be. I donated substantial amounts to the school where David had taught, establishing scholarships for students from low-income families. I also started a foundation to help elderly people protect themselves from financial abuse by family members. It turned out that my story was more common than I had realized. Adult children stealing from elderly parents was practically an epidemic, but perhaps most importantly, I learned to see myself as David had seen me, not as a dependent widow, but as a strong, intelligent woman capable of making her own decisions and living life on her own terms. 6 months after the confrontation with Marcus, I was having coffee at my favorite cafe, the one I now owned, though none of the staff knew that when a young woman approached my table. "Excuse me, are you Mrs. Santiago?" "Yes, I am. My name is Jessica. I'm a social worker specializing in elder abuse cases. I've been following the work of your foundation, and I wondered if you might have time to speak with me about a client who's going through something very similar to what you experienced." "Of course, please, sit down." As Jessica told me about her client, an elderly man whose daughter had stolen his savings and tried to force him into a nursing home, I realized that my experience with Marcus had given me something valuable: the ability to help others who were facing the same betrayal. "The difficult part," Jessica explained, "is that he still loves his daughter. He wants to protect her from criminal charges, but he also wants to get his money back and maintain his independence." "I understand completely. What does he want to do?" "He wants to find a way to get his money back without destroying his relationship with his daughter." "That's a difficult balance to achieve." "Yes, it is. I was hoping you might be willing to talk to him. Sometimes it helps to hear from someone who has been through the same experience." I agreed to meet with Jessica's client, and that meeting led to others. Before long, I was regularly counseling elderly people who had been financially abused by family members. Some chose to prosecute, others chose to quietly reclaim their assets and cut ties with their abusers. Each situation was different, but they all shared the same core elements: trust betrayed, dignity destroyed, and independence threatened. Working with these families taught me something important about my own situation with Marcus. I had chosen justice over reconciliation, and that choice had been right for me, but it wasn't the right choice for everyone. Some people were able to rebuild relationships after financial abuse. Others, like me, found that the trust could never be fully restored. 1 year after David's death, I received a letter from Marcus. It was postmarked from Oregon, where he and Sarah were apparently trying to start over. "Dear Mom," the letter began, "I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I felt I had to write this letter. I've spent the past 6 months in therapy, trying to understand how I could have done what I did to you. I don't have a good explanation, and I'm not writing to ask for forgiveness, because I know I don't deserve it. I'm writing to tell you that you were right about everything. I did see you as a burden. I did take advantage of your grief. I did lie about your mental capacity to justify my actions. I was selfish and cruel and dishonest. And I destroyed the most important relationship in my life because I was too proud and too greedy to appreciate what I had. Sarah and I are divorced now. The stress of what we did to you, combined with the financial consequences, was too much for our marriage to survive. I lost my business, my wife, my home, and most importantly, I lost my mother. I have no one to blame but myself. I don't expect you to respond to this letter. I just wanted you to know that I finally understand what I did to you, and I am deeply, truly sorry. You deserved so much better from the son you raised with such love and sacrifice. I hope you are happy. Mom, I hope you are using the wealth Dad left you to build a beautiful life. I hope you have found peace and joy after all the pain I caused you. I love you, and I will regret my actions for the rest of my life. Your son Marcus." I read the letter twice, then folded it carefully and put it in the drawer where I kept David's final letter to me. I didn't respond to Marcus, but I didn't throw the letter away either. It was evidence that he had finally learned the lesson I had tried to teach him, even if that lesson had come too late to save our relationship. 2 years after David's death, I was thriving in ways I never could have imagined. My foundation had helped dozens of elderly people reclaim their assets and their dignity. I had traveled to places David and I had always talked about visiting. I had made new friends, pursued new interests, and discovered strengths I didn't know I possessed. Most importantly, I had learned that being alone doesn't mean being lonely, and being older doesn't mean being powerless. I think David would have been proud of the woman. I had become not just the wealthy widow he had provided for, but the strong, independent person who had used his gifts to build a meaningful life and help others. Sometimes, I wondered what would have happened if Marcus had simply called me after David's death to ask how I was doing, instead of calculating how he could profit from my grief. Would our relationship have survived if he had chosen love over greed? I'll never know the answer to that question, but I do know that his betrayal, painful as it was, had revealed something important about both of us. It had shown me that I was stronger than I had ever realized, and it had shown him that actions have consequences, even when those actions are committed against someone you assume will never fight back. In the end, David's greatest gift to me wasn't the money he had secretly accumulated, it was the knowledge that I was worth protecting, worth defending, and worth fighting for, even if I had to do the fighting myself. Did you enjoy my story? Which city are you listening from? Let's connect in the comments. If you liked this story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can continue bringing you more stories like this. Thank you so much for your wonderful support. I'm looking forward to your thoughts on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 more fascinating life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more content on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story. With love and respect.